Today we're looking at a country that I know very little about. Bhutan is a nation in the Himalayas beside Nepal and India. I think it's called Bhutan or something in that direction. I can't say that I've got the pronunciation completely correct with that H. It's kind of throwing me off. But it's a very interesting country. Very, very small nation. It was actually a very isolated country until it opened up in the last 2 decades. And they didn't have TV, etc., for a very, very long time due to their kind of rules about what their society should look like. It has been seen as one of the happiest countries in the world. People say is Finland or Bhutan happier, but Bhutan's definitely up there. They have this idea that they've implemented a gross national happiness index, and it's meant to be more valuable than GDP. Happiness is valued more than GDP in the country. Yeah, ranked as one of the happiest countries in all of Asia, eighth happiest country in the world, so on and so forth. Which is an interesting claim to make. They also have a very interesting tourism policy where they charge tourists, I think, at least $100, if not $200, to stay the night. So here we have 200 USD per person per night, but here it also says $100 per night. Either way, they charge a hefty fee for you to turn up and to stay there. And that's an effort for them to not have too many tourists in order to maintain the landscape in a kind of a beautiful way. However, some countries are exempt from this. Sri Lanka, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, apparently. Yeah, very interesting idea. Yeah, so I have a few interesting pictures from different places in Bhutan. This is a very amazing palace, Punaka Dizong, maybe I don't know how to pronounce that. Very, very beautiful. It kind of reminds me of when people say like Dalai Lama and places like that. The palace of the Dalai Lama, those kind of regions is very old style, but very beautiful and very much intact, and it's just a very amazing culture in that country. Here's a similarly interesting one. Here are some military personnel out doing some sort of operation, but this is the yeah, another form of monastery, I suppose, or shrine or something. So some things that you don't really see in other parts of the world. I probably should have found out what they are. Let me see. They look a little bit like burial chambers or something, to be honest. Yeah, they might be, or maybe they're just monuments, but just very beautiful. And again, just the landscape is just intensely amazing. Really, just the middle of nowhere there. One of the most beautiful places in the world is what a lot of people do say about it. This is called the Dokula Pass. Let's see, go back to the other map style. And there's a resort there, but also this very interesting section that we saw there, and a monastery up further up on the mountain. Can we get a quick look at the monastery? Let's see if that loads for us. Yeah, it's looking down onto the hill where we just came from, and another amazing, amazing building. I mean, I don't even know how you make stuff like that. It reminds me a little bit of some Christian churches, some of the pictures you might see, but just the attention to detail is just incredible. I can see why people want to visit this place, and I also see why, quite rightly so, the people of Bhutan make it difficult and expensive for tourists to come in order to protect what they have. I took a quick little look at, this is the main city. I look at their buildings, again, very different to European styles, really quite amazing, quite interesting. You can, yeah, again, see the different styles there. One of the main ways that they produce electricity in the country, and the reason why they have quite a high debt ratio in relation to their GDP, is they've invested a lot of money in projects. This is a project that was funded by the Indian government, however, and then India gets energy from this dam when Bhutan doesn't need it. That's my understanding of it. Except in the dry season when Bhutan is actually a marginal net importer of electricity into the country. And this is again a very impressive bit of infrastructure. They've kind of backed up a lake here, or a river. Let's see how long it is. I think it's about 5 kilometers. Go to there, 3 kilometers to that point, 4.85, about 5 to the end. And of course, you could take all of these curves into account, which would make it longer. Yeah, bones of 5 kilometers anyway of water they've backed up with that dam, and producing electricity, clean electricity for their nation. And of course, with mountains like these, it makes so much sense to do that. Really, it just is pure wilderness. I mean, really quite fantastic. Let's just zoom in. Let's see, those are all mountains. Let me find something in terms of agriculture, maybe. Quite difficult to point out. Let's see if we can find a farm, something in that direction. Yeah, it's all just forest. This is a kind of a mine, probably. That could be a farm. That looks like a form of irrigation system set up there, maybe. Or drills, or like a paddy field or something, like terraces. I'm just throwing words out now. I'm not entirely sure. But that's quite interesting to see the house there. Sheds. They do have an army. These are the army barracks, I believe, and they were used over the years. There was various revolts to do with various issues. One of them, if I remember correctly, was to do with immigration. In 1988, Bhutan conducted a census in the south to guard against illegal immigration, where they have a very open border with the Indians. Each family, this is a bit weird, was required to present census workers with a tax receipt from the year 1958, no, not earlier, not later, or a certificate of origin. So if you didn't have this, and this is a very specific piece of paper that I've had, 30 years later, then they had people were kind of alarmed by it, and there was actually quite a lot of problems, leading to about 100,000 people being deemed illegal immigrants, and there was violence and killing and all sorts of terrible things that happened after that. And some Western countries took in those refugees. A lot of them are called, can't pronounce that, Lhotshampa refugees. Some went to Nepal, but they weren't really accepted there or seen as proper refugees in that country either. So yeah, quite a mess. Kind of a sad story there, to be honest. Another interesting part is that Bhutan used to have an absolute monarchy until the year 2000 and something, or 1999. Okay, just before the turn. Let's see, when did it actually move over? I think in the last 20, 30 years anyway. It was quite recent. And from something that I saw in a video that I once watched about this country, it said that the people didn't really want the guy to abdicate completely. They wanted to keep it a constitutional monarchy. Again, I don't know too much about that, but it's just an interesting idea that they like to keep things the way they are. I mean, that's kind of a conservative idea too, to not ruin your landscape, to keep things kind of in line with your traditions. This is also another proof of that. In 1999, the government lifted a ban on television and internet, making Bhutan one of the last countries to introduce television. In his speech, the king said television was a critical step for modernization, but warned that the misuse of this technology could erode traditional values. So again, kind of a conservative view. Yeah, quite interesting, very different to other parts of the world. Let's take a quick look at some other interesting points. I thought was interesting. So there were elections for the first time in 2008. This Bhutan Peace and Prosperity Party won all the seats, 45 out of 47. But in the next election, the People's Democratic Party basically swept the election again and won 32 seats. So I wonder what did this party, the DPT, do so wrong in those years that they lost so badly that they basically lost all their seats. Yeah, quite interesting. A lot of languages are spoken in this country, 53 according to this. Probably all the languages are kind of similar to each other, though I'd imagine they have one common language. I'm not going to pronounce that. Chonka, maybe. Yeah, in the Tibetan language family. And yeah, again, the main part of the economy is agriculture, forestry, tourism, and hydroelectric power to India. Interestingly, their currency is fixed to the rupee, so you can see they have a very strong connection to India in terms of power, in terms of security, probably as well, which is probably India trying to make sure they have good relations with countries on the border to China, because that's obviously quite a big deal, that long Indian-Chinese border. Yeah, we have Nepal, we have other countries in between acting as kind of like a buffer zone. So even though there's no direct border with India and China in these parts, it's important to have the states in between kind of on their side, I guess is the feeling there. And also, yeah, India's probably got a lot higher dense population in these areas compared to China, which is, yeah, it's Tibet basically. Much more empty, vast, mountainous regions. So it makes sense that they're connected to India in those ways, even in the currency, which is quite an interesting point. Yeah, so I'm going to continue looking at the economy here for another moment. Let's see about export partners and import partners. There you go. India, 93% exports iron, steel, salt, sulfur, cement, and aircraft. That's interesting. That's very weird. Aircraft. That's something, again, we saw that in the Nigeria video too. Aircraft parts, very interesting. Something's been sent to Italy too. I wonder what they're sending to Italy. Main import partners, India and China. Even though China doesn't make it into the export category, still probably a lot of electronics and bits of machinery probably coming from China. So that's quite interesting. UAE, South Korea. Yeah, that's always good to see the different breakdown to understand where the money's flowing in and out to which countries. Import goods, machinery, minerals, motor vehicles, metals. In terms of demographics, yeah, the situation isn't that amazing. I've heard as well about Bhutan that a lot of young people are leaving just because it's kind of a place that doesn't have a lot of opportunities for them. At the top, we see this perfect pyramid, and then yeah, the population just stopped expanding, and we kind of have this in-cutting. That could be the young people leaving there as well. And yeah, that's kind of undercut. The birth rate, I remember, is low. Yeah, it's 1.79, so it's below 2.1. Not incredibly low, but too low to maintain the population at the way it's going. They might take out more debt to pay people, but again, the pyramid at the top isn't that big yet. So right now, it's actually still quite a good pyramid in terms of these people paying for the people up there. But yeah, again, in 30, 40 years' time, you put that up here, and then this gets cut more, could be an issue eventually. That's just interesting and good to keep in mind. These are the different hydro dam projects. I wanted to actually look at those over here. I think I had one open. This is, let me see. Yeah, even though we already looked at it from above, I wanted to quickly look at it from the camera. You can kind of see it there. So that's the first one. Again, financed entirely by India. Apparently, India did give Bhutan a lot of grants for reasons, as described before, to do with security and yeah, prosperity in the region. It's kind of line to kind of catch materials that are floating down. I'm always fascinated by these infrastructure projects, I have to say. Okay, let's see what else I actually have mentioned here. Access to electricity, percentage of population in Bhutan. You can see how low this was just 20 years ago. Only 31% of the country had access to electricity, and that's been scaled up very steadily in investment up to 100% in the year 2018, just in time for COVID, basically. This is also interesting. I haven't understood this entirely yet. Yeah, I don't really get it. This is percent of agriculture of land of the country. So if the country is 100% of its land, then this is the percent that is agricultural land. 14% was kind of the peak, up to 15, and then it drops. I don't really know why it would drop. Might be to do with investment, but I'd imagine once you make land good for agriculture, why would you give it back or reduce it? Like, do you have such a big food surplus that you're not doing that anymore? Or maybe businesses and farms without a business? Kind of a question, because also if you look at the global map for this, you get a similar picture. I have no idea what this is about. This would really interest me if anybody knows in the comments. This is the year 1991, and this big drop in percent of agricultural land of the land area. So either the land changed, which hasn't been the case, I'd imagine. They know it's sort of like a big drought season or something, or I have no idea. Yeah, big percentage change there anyway, and gradually reducing since then. One concept which I don't think is valid in this case is that the land in the world is becoming less fertile, but we're destroying more fertilizer onto the land to kind of do away with that issue for now. Don't know if that's what this is about. Still, pretty super interesting idea. And these are the countries that have higher percentages of fertile land, I suppose. Russia isn't very high. A lot of permafrost in the north. Obviously, Iceland, Greenland, should I say, wouldn't be high. Ireland, 62%, pretty high. France, 52. The States, 44. Okay, well, let's focus again on the country we're talking about today. I have some more indicators open here. Bhutan, in terms of the fragility of its state, it's 65th in the world, I believe, just as this is reloading. Let's see if we can find it again there. Bhutan. Oh, sorry, 96 out of 179 countries. Okay, so that's in the middle, you could say. In terms of energy production, it's all hydro, more or less. Produces more than it consumes, 0.079 to 0.061. So that's a good thing. All of that hydro is really keeping it going. Yeah, no data on electricity there. In terms of doing business rankings, where did we go? Oh yeah, let's go again. Bhutan. I believe it's more or less in the middle, 89 out of 190. Yeah, so it's again right in the middle. This is the currency, Bhutanese versus the US dollar. Again, losing value against the US dollar, but just following the rupee basically. Partly free, this was good to see as well, 63, so as a state in Asia, not entirely free due to the fact that it's still a monarchy, I suppose, and there was those issues with the people who were deemed illegal immigrants, but that has been quite a while ago, of course, but yeah, 63 is a score there. IMF data, let's see if we can find the one on the debt. Inflation has been pretty steady, to be honest. 5% is, not desirable still. You want a bit less than that, but in terms of other countries that we've seen, 5% is actually not that bad. We had 9% there, 12, and kind of been brought back under control. COVID didn't really do that much damage to it. And here we have periods of deflation actually, which is a bad thing. 1980s, the 2000s. So of course this is also an issue when your property that you own actually loses value. That's also not desirable, of course, in a country. Unemployment rate is pretty okay. It's been kind of going up, but it's still not incredibly high like other countries that we've seen. 2% in the 2000 teens, 3%, pretty good, and going up to 6% lately. A lot of young people probably leaving the country because of that. Can we find gross general government debt? Pretty high for such a tiny nation. Look at that, it's red. So it's, you see there's China's 87%, Nepal very low, 47, India 82. That's kind of normal for a lot of big economies. Bhutan, very small economy. So they're probably investing a lot of money in infrastructure projects, hoping that it'll pay off over time. But yeah, it's pretty high, 132 a while ago, right now 123. They didn't put on a lot during COVID though, I'd say, relatively. Still, that's just an interesting fact to keep in mind. We even think about the interest payments. Let me just quickly look for the interest. Interest paid in public debt, 1.49 GDP. Okay, that's not terrible. Yeah, quite healthy actually compared to India, 5%. Fair enough. Yeah, fair. Not much of a military to speak of here. I didn't find. Did I find something in Bhutan? They do have a military, but there's just no data there for them. And yeah, that's the employment rate again. And in terms of how developed are they? They're in the middle of the road again. Now they have electricity, of course, it would have improved things an awful lot. So just an interesting country. I wanted to share the few bits I learned about it. Meant to be quite a nice touristic spot, same as Nepal, of course. And it's just a place I'd never heard of before. Other than maybe one or two tiny conversations ages ago that I can't really recall that well. Very interesting country, and yeah, who knows how things will go. I mean, I hope that their tourism does well, that they don't ruin their landscape, and that they remain a happy country.